we're back, baby. It's the Horns Up Talking Texas podcast. Fisher, Tosopoulos, DJ, Nikki Snacks Crider. I want to say Happy New Year, but ultimately it's a somber New Year for everybody in Longhorn Nation. Amazing season by our Texas Longhorns. Couldn't be more excited to get to the college football playoffs. Falling short was a bit of a gut punch, especially when we were favored. We really thought we were going to take it to Washington. The national championship is in Houston. It felt like all signs were pointing to us going and trying to get that ring in our home state, but ultimately it's not going to happen. We lose 37-31. Former friend of the show, former guest of this show, TJ Vogel predicted the score: Texas 37, Washington 31, which is it's honestly impressive, but kind of unlucky because it's flipped. And our Texas Longhorns, really, we put up a fight. We got in there lucky at the end of the game, really exciting. But by and large, Washington proved and Michael Penix Jr. proved that they are for real. They are deserving to be in the college football playoffs. They are deserving to be undefeated. They are deserving to be in the national championship game. He would deserve to be as close as he was to Jaden Daniels in the Heisman. And he really is a top 10 caliber talent in the NFL draft coming up. And DeBoer is a really great head coach, and their offensive line, who we were giving credit to, we probably needed to give even more credit to, was fantastic and really held up against our strong defensive front. And the receivers are, I was in a group text and someone said they're not as good as the 2019 LSU receivers, but I think we'll look back and be like, hey, like that group is worthy of being mentioned.
They're pretty close. Yeah, I mean, I said this to you guys before we started recording that maybe we just didn't give Washington enough credit. I mean, look, we know they're the number 2 team in the nation. They went undefeated, didn't take a loss, won the Pac-12 outright, took care of business against Oregon twice that people thought they were better than. They played such a clean game, top to bottom. I mean, low penalties. Their offensive line didn't get any sacks. I mean, I said it last week that our magic number needs to be 3 or 4 sacks, and we got 0. They didn't turn the ball over besides that muff punt. If you want to consider that a turnover, that was a gift to us. They played a clean game, like as clean as you could possibly play. And, minus, a couple of decisions that we'll get into a little bit later, they probably should have beat us by more. The fact that we were tied at halftime blew my mind. The fact that we had the ball left with the last play of the game on the 13-yard line to score the game-winning touchdown blew my mind. Like, we were getting handed opportunities, and we just didn't execute at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought we did. To our credit, to the Longhorns' credit, they did a good job of fighting back. Mm-hmm. They did a good job of rallying when they needed to stay in this game. Now, Washington dictated the entire game, right? We were playing their tempo. We were playing their game. Remind me which game it was that in the third quarter, I think it might have been Wyoming, where they had the ball almost 11 or 12 minutes earlier in the season, and they took the ball out of Texas's hands. Washington did the exact same thing in the third quarter of this game. They were doing this side-by-side comparison of Penix and Ewers. They did that throughout the entire game. It never looked good. But I think at one point in the third quarter, they flashed a graphic that said, like, Penix was 13 for 14 and Quinn was like 4 for 6 or something like that. And we had barely even touched the ball. So they dominated time of possession. You already mentioned, Nick, they had the one turnover on special teams, but outside of that, they took care of the football. And it's really easy to take care of the football, especially on the offensive side of the ball, when your QB is hardly even getting touched, breathed on by our defensive front. And all credit to their offensive line. And, our defensive line was highly touted by college media personalities, ourselves on our show, Quan, the Texas coaching staff throughout the entire season. Where we dominated was interior defensive line with Sweat and Murphy. A lot of times, because they were airing the ball out, those guys couldn't even be on the field. Yeah. And our younger position players, Burke and Sorrell, have a lot of growing to do. And I'm glad that, they're coming back to prove next year that they get even better. Because when you want to get after a quarterback, it's on the edge guys, right? Like the defensive tackles can get past guys. They can get past the guard and the centers. But those guys draw a lot of double teams. And if your playmakers on the edge can't get to the QB, it's really, really tough. And our guys just weren't able to. And all credit to the best. Hill too. And all credit to the best offensive line in football. That's the award they were given, and they looked like it. I mean, yeah. Penix was fantastic, but he had so much time back there.
He was elusive too, though. Like he really moved. He moves around the pocket extremely nicely. Like I think
he ran more than we expected as well.
Yeah, it was the most athletic I've seen him since, and they were saying on the broadcast probably since his Indiana days. Like he really has turned into more of a pocket passer this year, but he really moved quite nicely, and it was eerily similar to the OU game to me, honestly. The design runs they had with Dylan Gabriel kind of reminded me in moments the way they did with Michael Penix Jr. They clearly watched that game, and I think they kind of had some delayed, QB draws, which worked out in their favor for 2 first downs. And the way we came out reminded me of the O game too. I had one of our buddies who doesn't really watch football text me and goes, why are all the passes getting deflected? Like why is Quinn look kind of not sharp really to start the game? And that's how OU felt. And I think Sark and Quinn and for next year, and this is one of my takeaways and one of the things I want to see for next season. I want them to come out swinging a bit harder, especially in the big games. Like I wanted that firepower that we saw in the Oklahoma State game, in the Big 12 championship game. Like we were missing that until really the fourth quarter, when all of a sudden the passing attack, and then when they were dropping back and kind of giving us some yards, the passing attack started to, come into its own and fall into place. Like Alex said, the third quarter was completely disastrous. It's probably the worst quarter of football we had all season, and it's a really inopportune time. But I really was missing the zip that Penix Jr. had on his ball, and the zip that that offense had, and that firepower, that high octane offense. Like they had no rust off that time, like all that time off. They had no rust. They were ready to rock. Our team really eased into the game, and you can't do that against a really potent offense like that. You got to come out swinging.
Yeah, and I'll say my takeaway is very similar to yours. They mentioned in the broadcast that Sark likes to script the first 40 plays of the game. I think a lot of that's, in some fashions, that's fine and that works. But I think you have to be more inclined, especially in a game like this, to go off the script and have to, improvise a little bit more and get different style of plays going. Because as you could see early in the game, we weren't completing the first 2-3 passes of the game, and then we're going 3 and out. Incompletion. We were
getting
just
behind the sticks, though.
Behind the stick the whole time. And so, your script doesn't call for that, right? Your script is okay, we're getting chunk yardage. So, don't be afraid to go off script. Don't be afraid to switch it up from here and there, and then go back to the script. I just feel like they tried too hard to follow the way that they wanted this to go from last week, or from maybe even earlier this month. They've had all month to pregame this, but. Don't be afraid to go off script here.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, at least in the first half, going off script offensively would have been running the football on first and second down and dominating, which our offensive line, I thought they weren't great in regards to pass blocking, but there were some open lanes for our running backs, and they really took advantage.
Averaged 6.4 yards a carry.
Yeah, TJ Baxter and Jaden Blue both were effective running the football. Obviously, they both, were a little too loose with the rock and fumbled in this game. And for me, one of the takeaways is, as we've been talking about, and Quan has really been harping on this the entire season, this is a team that's learning how to win. And I thought in this game, we were very apparently the younger of the two football teams, the less experienced of the two football teams. And I think that to me was the difference between, Penix, who's a 23-year-old QB, and Quinn Ewers, who's 20 years old. Two of our running backs, unfortunately, Jonathan Brooks wasn't able to play in this game because of that horrific injury, but we had young guys running the football, and they both made mistakes, but they also both had really successful plays. Baxter had that touchdown. Blue had that catch at the end of the game, but he also had that drop on the crucial play out of the backfield, where if he had caught that, he had room to run, and that might have been a different drive. So I just felt like while we didn't execute, Washington was perfect. And I think a lot of that has to go with the coaching and the experience of the coaching being in a position like this, playing Oregon twice during the regular season, basically being in 2 playoff games twice. And we played that Oklahoma team, but we didn't really know what that was. It's always a playoff atmosphere in that game. Alabama, I would say that was a playoff game as well. But after watching them against Michigan, I would say that of the 4 teams, I was least impressed with Alabama in the college football playoff, although both matchups were incredible games, relatively close. And of course, that game went to overtime. But just as far as, playing Jalen Milroe versus playing Michael Penix, it's a completely different ballgame. Michael Penix operated maybe in the last 5 years, that's the second best performance I've seen from a QB. only because I was live in person at that LSU Oklahoma game with Joe Burrow, where they scored 49 points in the first half.
But the Mac Jones, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go tit for tat on you here, but it's definitely up there. Like, especially the way he started off 6 of 8 for 190 yards against us. And like every throw he hit was a drop in on the dime, bullet pass, fitting in every window. The throws are ridiculous.
I think he missed like one deep ball.
Yeah,
and I remember I think when we were watching, and we were all like, "Thank God!" We're like, "Jesus, thank God!" Like, like it would have been like it was so apparent that he was open. I'm like, "Oh my God, here we go again." And he was a lot better, ironically. And I know when I saw them up close and personal against USC, they ran the football for 200 yards. Completely different story. Us holding Dylan Johnson for 21 carries for 43 yards, which is fantastic. The run defense did their job for the Texas Longhorns. Penix Jr. looked a lot better than when I saw him live in person. He really, and I think that goes to this Washington team. Like, they were the number 2 team in the nation. They were 13-0, and yet they were the underdog. Michael Penix Jr. was close, but didn't win the Heisman. Obviously Jaden Daniels' numbers were video game numbers, but Penix Jr. was undefeated, and he won his conference championship. And a lot of us felt that he should have won it. Something against Jaden Daniels, but as far as winning / the stats and the numbers go, like, Penix Jr. had both. And I think they felt disrespected, and I think they had a massive chip on their shoulder. And this Texas team, we saw them at times get complacent, and we saw them at times not play two complete halves of football, only one complete half of football. And unfortunately, I think, it was a miracle that we was 21-21 at the half, and then we had 2 fumbles in the third quarter, and that's it. Like, you turn the ball over twice against that team, they're going to make you pay, and they're going to beat you. And it's by the grace of God that we had that injury timeout to even make this a game and have what set up to be the biggest cock tease of 2024, day one. And it's just it's unfortunate that we couldn't go and get the job done, but ultimately, like, you have to be happy with where this team got to this year. It's the final year of the 14 playoff. And look, no one more than us wishes we went all the way and thought we can go all the way. And I really think that, like, looking at all 4 of these teams, we played the worst game we could have, almost. Like, we really did. We played pretty badly. The defensive backfield was non-existent. The pass rush, like Toss was saying, was non-existent. We had Keelan Robinson with a club on his hand, like full Jason Pierre-Paul mode, returning kicks. I couldn't even fathom what after Blue returned a nice one. And
he was returning nice ones all game. I think you would. Let's see. He
averaged
26.7 yards per return.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that his longest was 31. And when Keelan was touching the ball, I mean, look, he's been electric for us all season. With the club on your hand, you drop the ball, like, you're immediately losing 5 to 10 yards because of you can't accelerate. Like, you have to pick up the ball, and by then the defenders are 10 yards more down the field. And he averaged 7.6 yards per kick return. He returned the kick 5 times.
So, when they have 2 pooch kicks to one guy, like, that's exactly what they want to do, right? Like, they're just like, we're making the decision making very easy in that particular phase of the game for the Washington coaching staff, right? They say, okay, we'll give it to the guy at the club. Of course, we know he's not going to break one loose, and he's only got one arm to protect the football. So I got really, really scared that he was going to fumble on the two pooch kicks that they sent his way.
I also want to say quickly on the last drive, because, like, look, we shouldn't have been there, but we got there, and Whittington, big boy, every second, every drive, every snap he played for us as a Texas Longhorn, when he was healthy, he gave it all he got. And a lot of guys really helped deliver on that final drive. But when we got down there, the play calling was so questionable. I got kind of roasted in one of my group texts about saying, like, I get why we didn't attack the middle of the field and the middle of the end zone, but I would have liked to see us try to go to Sanders, try to go to Whittington. And, like, I know we have no timeouts left, but it's not absolutely crazy to get a little closer, spike the ball. It would have been better than, like, a couple of the last plays we ran, especially, like, after we hit the fade the first time for the touchdown to A.D. Mitchell. They knew it was coming, and to run it twice, like, and I get he was under pressure, but it just didn't work.
Well, the way that I look at it, okay, let's start from the beginning, right? Dylan Johnson goes down. What are you doing there? Just crawl off the field if you have to. I think everyone thought the same thing. They basically gifted us a timeout. Would have had the ball left with maybe 15 seconds left and had to have gone down the entire distance of the field. Instead, we get it with 50 seconds left. And on top of that, they have that kick return or the punter interference, right, where we get an extra 15 yards on that. So 2, bad mistakes by Washington, probably the biggest mistakes they've made all game besides the muff punt. This is the most penalized game that we've had all season, I think they said. So, we were really gifted that end of the game. Now, the play calling up till when we got to the 13-yard line was great. The deep ball to Whittington 1-on-1, that was awesome. They took all the attention to Xavier Worthy and Sanders and AD Mitchell and left, they're one of their weaker defensive players on our senior, who this means a lot to, in Whittington. He makes a great catch. And then, of course, gave Jaden Blue some respect. Like, he had that amazing catch too on the sideline that got reviewed, that ended up standing. But then once we got there to the 13-yard line, right, you got 4 plays. Mm-hmm. We actually got gifted a 4th play because, it was questionable whether or not we had 1 second left on the clock or 0 seconds left on the clock.
Great work by that guy on our staff who caught the ball.
Yeah, exactly. So, if that ball hangs up in the air a little bit longer, they put zeros up on the clock. So thank you, ball boy. But at the end of the day, yes, the play call was not great, right? You start off doing that little like bubble screen or you throw the out route to Jaden for negative yardage. You lose, 4 or 5 seconds. And you throw, a fade to AD Mitchell, doesn't work, right? And then
the incomplete pass that goes out of bounds that ball boy catches.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's the play. And then the last play of the game. So look, the fade was there, like we all saw, like, the frame by frame, like it was a matter of inches. Like, the guy honestly got on him a little early, like that could have been called, it's ticky tacky.
They're not going to call it at the end of the game.
That ball also could have been thrown, more less in the air and more as a through ball, because he had separation, put some zip on it there. That
zip it front pylon, let your guy go make the play.
100%. But
the fade is
one thing before you get there. The one thing is, when I saw that play, I was like, okay, how are we not at least trying to figure out multiple routes and not just throw that fade? That fade's going to be there, right? So if you need to, check it. But what we ended up doing was taking Whittington in motion, and basically taking completely out of the play, because all he did was stand on the other side. And that didn't do anything besides, clear a safety out of the way, to get one-on-one with AD Mitchell, when you could have honestly, you could have seen what Xavier was doing across the middle. You could have seen what Sanders was doing. You could have ran a combo route. I mean, Greg McElroy mentioned a route. He said, these should do double post right here with AD and Xavier Worthy. Let whoever gets open, get open. One of those guys might get open. And so I hated the fact that we weren't getting forward, and we could have even tried to get a first down, or at least try to get, 5 yards to get it a little bit closer. I mean, a 13-yard fade route's tough.
Yeah, that's why I was like saying, like, we could attack. I don't even mean like attack the middle of the field. Like, I made a joke, like, hit Ogbo at the 3-yard line and let's see if he can barrel his way in. Like, let's roll the dice.
This is first pitch of the season, right?
Epic. I loved it. It was fire. And then, like, but I think for real though, like, I why not, in the first play try to attack the middle of the field, and that way they have to respect it a little bit because they know that you're ready to roll the dice, and then spike it, and then you have 2 plays at the 5-yard line, and. It just, the fade route for 13 yards, you're so right, doesn't make sense. I think looking at the way, like, the frame by frame, like all the different angles, I think what happened with Quinn was he didn't want to take a sack and he didn't want to throw a pick. I think he was trying to do a lot more things that he's like, I'm trying not to do these things, versus, like, nuts in the bump, like trying to zip it in there. Because you see there's a linebacker right there. I think he got a little spooked by him, which is why he tries to loft it over for the fade. He had some pressure. They got through on him. Last thing you want to do in the last play is take a sack. That's a terrible look in his mind. So I think he just kind of lofted it up and try to strike lightning twice, and it didn't work out. But once we had that negative play to Blue for a negative yard that killed some time, I was like, they really didn't have it. And, a Whittington catch saved the drive, because the drive, now that if we remember, it started off with 2 incompletions by Quinn. Like, 2 big, 1 bad throw and then another bad throw to Sanders, who really wasn't even looking. So it was a little disappointing there. But I do think that, I would have loved. And Toss, I don't know if you said this before the show or maybe during the beginning of the show, but it would have been at least very helpful if we scored on that first drive rather than get the field. And I wanted them to kick the field.
And we were attempting to score, because I think there were multiple opportunities when we got to the 30. Yeah. At least the people that we were watching it with, Josh, were like, of course, they have such trust in Burt that they were like, just rip the field goal now.
I was saying that. I was like, kick the field goal, let's get some points.
But I liked what Sark did. We got to the 10. We got 2 more first downs after that, and we had a chance. We were knocking on the door to score. then, we tried, we used all 3 downs, we kicked the field goal. Okay, we took the points when we had to at that point, which I was super comfortable with that decision making. I think it was great that you pointed out before that we had that Whittington throw and the catch, an excellent play, and that was on Muhammad, who had actually had a pretty good game and obviously was talking a lot of smack. So I loved that he made that play on him in that moment. But I just thought that it's kind of a confluence of multiple things. That last drive and that last opportunity that we had and to me, it all points to the inexperience on the offensive line to not, do what they need to do to give Quinn enough time to make proper decisions. And it's hard not to compare Quinn to the other guy that was quarterbacking in this game.
Who's 24 years old. I mean,
exactly. He's 4 years of life and football that he's played more than Quinn. But I think that the thing that Quinn, what holds him back still and what we saw throughout the year. And I think one of the things that you could talk about with him is that he is at this point in his career inconsistent and or streaky, right? The talent is there. And when it's right, it looks really, really good. But I think he just makes decisions pre-snap and ends up kind of tracking to one target as opposed to reading the defense and then making the play and making the throw. And so I think the fade route to AD, I think a lot of things are going into Quinn's mind, and I'd love to hear what he has to say about it at some point. But I think part of what was in his mind is 2 drives ago when AD Mitchell, before he caught the fade, was pissed on the sideline being like, get me the ball. Why are you not getting me the ball? Yeah. And so at a certain point, he has to trust himself, Quinn, and say, okay, yes, I want to get the ball to AD, but I got to get it to him in the right way. And by just floating a prayer up there, that doesn't give us the best chance of catching that and converting, right? And I also think that the check down to Blue with the first play, I think there was an acknowledgement that Sark knew that they were going to play drop shell coverage and that there might be an opportunity for him to scamper up the sideline and get 10, 15 yards quickly. But you also have 2 young players there. And what Blue has to recognize when Quinn throws him the ball is that if it's not there, he's got to bat that ball down and give us as much time as possible. Right.
Yeah. I mean, that's like,
as opposed to catching it and then getting it out of bounds. Like it's really hard to make that level of decision making.
Tough play.
But you have to. And that's the margin of error that we were at that point in the game.
I think before you go next, I think a big, our buddy Benji Dweck hopped in. He said, sorry for the loss, Scope Puffs. He's a buff. I got to text him back. I think he texted me earlier. I got to text him back. I forgot to. I think what Sark realized though after that, I think we needed Blue's help in the blocking game. He really needed to drop back and we needed help because I think one of the more underrated players in this game was Braylon Trice. And Braylon Trice was pretty fantastic as far as edge guys go. And he really, as much as Penix made a name for himself, as much as Roland Dunze cemented himself as the number 2 wide receiver in this draft class, Braylon Trice in a group of edge rushers where we don't really know outside of maybe Latu who can go first over of all those edge rushers. I think Braylon Trice really showed something against a good Texas, offensive line in the passing game. So he really impressed me.
I mean, he dominated. He dominated.
Forced fumble, sacks. Like he really, I know Penix was the MVP, but if there was a second MVP and he was the defensive player of the game, it should have been Braylon Trice. And I'm really excited to see him go up against this Michigan offensive line, who did a really nice job against a strong Alabama defensive line. Yeah. All right, quickly, guys. One thing that you want to see for next year, it can be positive or negative, but one thing that you want to see from this year that you want to carry over to next year.
I think I want to see just more of an identity on offense because at the end of the day, I feel like, look, we crushed it in the run game all season long. This game we had over 180 yards rushing the ball, but they ran the ball more than we did. I know they were trying to run the clock out, but like having more of an identity on offense to know like what your strong suits are, because I think sometimes we lack that. Mm-hmm. And with the receivers that we're going to have coming in next season, I mean, I still bet that we're going to lose AD Mitchell and Xavier Worthy. And then, of course, we know that Whittington can't return because his eligibility is up. There's rumors that maybe Sanders comes back. But just lean on those guys to be like the Roma Dunze and, the Jalen Polk and the Jalen McMillan that you had that Washington has. I want that dominant aerial attack where, Quinn's going to have multiple options to go to playmakers that are going to be pros next year. And he did this year. I just feel like we didn't utilize our guys the way that we should have. Xavier Worthy had 2 catches all game, and he's one of the most electric players in all college football. And so, when we have Jonte Cook and you have Ryan Wingo and you have Matthew Golden and whoever comes in and steps up and starts on our offense, you need to make sure those guys are touching the ball, 5-6 times a game. They won this game because Roma Dunze touched the ball 6 times. Polk touched the ball 5 times. Westover, who I told you guys was probably their unsung hero, right? Their super senior tight end who just made crucial catch after crucial catch. And then Jalen McMillan had 5 catches. I mean, you want to make sure that those best guys get the ball as many times as possible. And look, our top receiver was Jatavian Sanders. He had 6 catches. That's fine. But Xavier having 2 and Adonai having 4, it doesn't cut it for me.
Especially it's at the end of the game too. Yeah. I'm with you. It's like it's like borderline garbage time.
Right. And I've also same thing goes for the run game too. If we're breaking off 6.4 yards a game, as you guys mentioned, why are we not going, running the ball on first down, trying to get 6 yards, chunk plays, right? CJ Baxter had 9 carries and Jaden Blue had 9 carries. Why don't they each have 10 carries?
Yeah. Well, I think the fumbling and us being down hurt us. And I think that's what I'm maybe excited for next year is the football, running the rock with Brooks, Blue, and Baxter, the triple Bs. I think could all be really nice. And I'll go back to mine before I get to yours, Toss, to close this out. I want Sark and Quinn to have that edge where they can dominate and should dominate every game, not just on opponents that they know they can kick their ass. Like we knew we could kick Oklahoma State's ass. We knew it was the last Big 12 championship, and we came out. We put nuts on the bump. This game, the OU game, we came out a little timid, a little scared, and the other team hit us right in the mouth, and they weren't, and they were ready for that big moment, and they had that chip on their shoulder. I know we made it. I know we're going to the SEC, but people want to beat us. People want to show that we don't belong. I want to have that chip on the shoulder next season, and I want to go to Michigan, and I want to prove it. Especially if Michigan wins this fucking thing, I want to go into their house and I want to win. I want Quinn and Sark to prove that Quinn should be, if he's coming back, the top guy next year in the NFL draft. That should be like every single game.
Yeah, and before you go, Toss, you just said something that I've been thinking about all day and all yesterday. It's so apparent. I mean, I feel like we already knew this, but man, there are a lot of people that hate us, that love.
Oh yeah,
I was just walking through San Diego where I was spending New Year's, and I had my Texas jersey on before the game, and everyone just giving me horns down, and people were like, "Go Washington, UW money line!" Clearly not even Washington fans. You're not wearing any Washington gear. You're saying UW money line, not go Huskies. You're just talking with your pockets. But also just looking at Twitter about how many people are just trying to roast us and putting down the horns down emojis. It's God, you guys are you have no tie to either OU or A&M or anything like that, and you still want to throw horns down and make our university relevant in your mind. Makes no sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going away. It definitely won't go away. We just haven't been in a position where we've been winning enough to get the boo birds out in full force for no reason, right? Now they're just mad because they're mad, whether it's OU fans or A&M fans, mad that we're in the college football semifinal. Johnny Manziel tweeted about us, which we play all next year. I mean, it's fun. It's good because that rivalry will become a big thing again, no matter what teams, no matter whether Texas or Texas A&M for the next 5 years are really, really good or not. To have that rivalry back will be really, really great. But for our team, takeaways and things I want to see the continued growth. I want to see us stay hungry, right? I want to be hearing about what's going on in preseason and camp and spring ball, and that these guys are not satisfied. I want to hear that they want to come back and they want a championship. I want to hear that vocalization from CDC, from Sark, from some of the players. There's a lot of work to do. These guys are young, but it doesn't mean that they can't get better. And I expect them to get better. And if they do, that's going to be a lot of fun for us to watch as fans because these guys are really, really talented. We've been developing the last 2 years, better than we have in the last 10 years that we've been watching as Texas football fans. So I'm excited about that. I really want to see next year going into game after game in our schedule. I want to see PK get a little bit more creative defensively. I think, looking at that Michigan defensive line and how they handled the Alabama offensive line, they were running stunts. they were throwing guys all over the defensive line. And I just felt like we kind of rushed 4, and maybe we bring a linebacker. Like we don't get very creative with it. And I thought that put a lot of pressure on our weakest personnel group this year in the defensive backfield, which will get better last year, which has already been addressed in recruiting. We're young. We're bringing guys in like Kuba. Like we will be better there, but it doesn't mean that our talent is going to get us through things by itself. And I thought that, while PK was really, really good, a lot of that just had to do with the fact that we had 2 studs up the middle who are just beasts of players. And Byron and Tavondre were fantastic all season. I want, whether it's Burke or Sorrell, which we called for going into this season for Barron, or if it's Simmons, who makes a huge impact as a freshman,
Trey Moore,
or it's Trey Moore, whoever it is, to become one of the most dominant edge rushers in college football, because I'm starting to realize more and more, we know how impactful those players are in the NFL and how important they are, but we need a guy like that can be a real game wrecker, like Dio was for us. Yeah. And we didn't have that this year. We just didn't. Like, it's great to stop the run, but a lot of teams in college football throw, and they throw often. So
I think we will with the guys, with all those guys that you just listed were, I think, having that depth there, and that, and again, Simmons will be a freshman, but Hill and Sorrell will be a senior, Burke a junior, Hill a sophomore. He had a lot of snaps this year, and Trey Moore is going to be a junior. I think, all that depth and all that experience is going to be really beneficial as we go to the SEC to go and get the quarterback. Well, you're right. The strong suit was up the middle, but I think the strong suit then becomes on the edges where we really need it. And I think it's really cool that, look, Dallas Turner for the Alabama Crimson Tide, he declared as soon as the game was over. He declared for the NFL draft. I'm not saying that no one's declaring, but so far I haven't heard anything about anybody declaring. So I really think we'll see. Look, I'm not holding out hope, I'm not holding out my breath, but it should be pointed out that no one has made an exact decision yet. So it really leads me to believe that guys like Mitchell, guys like Sanders, guys like Worthy, guys like Murphy, who can go to the draft, are going to sit here and consider it. And they're actually going to think on it. They should go to should they go to the draft? Yes, you'll be taking that at worst the second round. And if you're going to be taking it at worst the second round, it's not worth you risking it in my book. And I think any of our books. But college is different. You get paid nowadays to go to school. And if you really want that national championship and you think that you could all return and get that national championship, which if all these guys return, we're going to be a top 5 team, no doubt, next season in the 12-team playoff, first year in the SEC, and you want that smoke, 1 or 2 guys makes all the difference. So, yeah. All right, gents. Sad, but true. Great year. And we'll get them next time. We really will. So I think I think it's the first year we can actually say that with sincere confidence rather than just hope.
Well, I told you earlier today, Josh, and I'm sure Nick, you share the same sentiment. I've never been as excited, as sad as I am, as heavy as my heart is right now for our guys who put their blood, sweat, and tears into this team, into the season. I've never been more excited the day after our season has ended, or at least in the last 10 years, because I'm upset that I don't get to watch these guys now, because I know how hungry they are and how sour of a taste they have in their mouth after that loss. And we're going to be great next year, and I'm excited to watch it.
I'm excited, but when you get that close, it does feel like you're like, we've put so much time and emotion and work into just covering this team and watching this team and hoping and praying for this team. And
selfishly, we wanted to go get content. It sucks. It sucks for the kids, it sucks for the fans, it sucks for the coverage guys. It
no doubt. As fans, I feel like we all feel this, and it's a good. Obviously, we have this oasis where we can talk about this and vent a little bit, and people can listen in and also express the same feelings. And if they want to, hop in the comments and say stuff to us on there as well. I mean, it's always nice to have that community. That's one thing I think I've always been really proud to say I'm a Longhorn about, is the community that we have. I feel like other Longhorns are also very supportive, and I feel like through and through we have a really good fan base, and people, for the most part, are pretty realistic. I mean, you do have those people sometimes that are, a little outlandish and kind of have unrealistic expectations. I mean, look, we look at the teams that we had with Tom Herman, we had with Chuck Strong, and even the early Sark teams. We always joked it's our year, but we always knew come on, those teams aren't national title caliber. And I think this year there were still some questions even with us and with Q, saying that, we're not really there yet. We're a playoff team, but I think if we had Chris Warren on, he said the same thing. He's like, yeah, like there's a difference between being a playoff team and a national champion. And, as the season kind of went along, like you started to see more of the identity of this team that we fight. But yeah, I mean, look, we had those games where we played it way too close, but it was questionable whether or not we even belonged. And this game, had a lot of glimpses of what we had during those shaky games this season against Kansas State, against Wyoming, against Houston. And at the end, it's incredible that we had the chance to win it and go to and walk it off basically with the last second of the game. But looking forward to next season, I think it'll be a really fun one. No matter who's on this roster, no matter who's not on this roster, we're guessing Quinn's going to be our guy because I think he would have gone if he had 2 amazing games, but it's not going to be the case. But yeah, I'm excited. I mean, we know that Arch has no intention of transferring. He come out and said, I haven't thought about transferring. So, don't look behind, don't look over your shoulder, in that case, when it comes to, is he going to transfer? Is he not? And just be excited about the guys that are coming in because we have a top 3 recruiting class and we crushed the transfer portal and it's not even over yet.
And you never know. We lost Bijan Robinson. And everyone thought our run game was going to go to crap and look who emerged. So anything could happen. It's always next man up. And these guys, like we said, we maybe at times didn't think we were a championship caliber team, but we proved we belong. We proved we could take the potential national champion to the last second. And it's a really, really, it's a 10 out of 10 season for me. Maybe 9.5 because we didn't get the last ring. But really awesome stuff. Pleasure as always. We'll see you guys tomorrow because we're the Horns Up Talking Texas podcast. Fisher Tosopolis, DJ, Nikki, Snacks, Kreider. We out ya. We love ya.
Hook 'em.